Elizabeth Chappell, a lifelong entrepreneur who finally found my niche. After years of new ideas and jumping from business to business, I figured out how to turn a craft into a successful career. In 2016, I started a monthly subscription box for quilters. That little startup has grown into a thriving, multiple six-figure business that I am so proud of. As a published author, designer of fabrics and patterns being sold throughout the world, my favorite thing to do is to teach others how to grow a career of their dreams. Each week, you'll hear from me or from other guests who are creative entrepreneurs, so you can learn exactly what to do and what not to do to grow a career that's more rewarding and successful than you ever thought possible. If you're ready to turn your craft into a career that you love, I am so excited you're here. Welcome to the Craft to Career podcast. This week's episode, I'm going to be sharing some things that I've learned with my business coach, Lindsey White. She was a guest on this podcast just a few weeks ago. And since then, I have hired her and I've been working with her as a business coach. It's been amazing. It's been one of those where even my husband is like, oh, okay, this is great. Like he can tell the difference that it's had in my life. And it's really reshaped a lot of my thoughts. And last week, I did the episode Running a Business with Depression. And I shared at the end of that episode that I was going to go have a meeting with Lindsey. And it was such a great meeting. And so while I didn't record our exact conversation, I did want to share with you some of the lessons that I'm learning with her. Because these are wonderful life skills that can help anyone. Honestly, yes, this helps the entrepreneur, but this is something that helps any person in the world. And so what I'm sharing with you today is something that Lindsey works a lot with, or teaches about. And they are concepts from Shirzad Chamine. He shares a TED Talk on the topic, but he also writes a book. The book, it's called Positive Intelligence. And the thought that he talks about is that we all have these saboteurs. The saboteurs are thoughts in our minds that sabotage us. Now, they all started from a place of protection, of trying to keep us safe in our childhood, trying to have success and happiness. But as we grow older, they are really sabotaging our growth and our success and the way that we're able to connect with others. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, like where did these come from and why? But there are 10 different saboteurs that Shirzad has recognized and given a name to. And it is so powerful to be able to give a name to these saboteurs. So a lot of times when I'm talking with Lindsey, she'll say, okay, what saboteur do we recognize here? And it's kind of hard, I mean, sometimes it's kind of frustrating. I'm like, no, it's not a saboteur. That person's actually an idiot or whatever, or this circumstance really sucks, or no, I shouldn't have to be doing this. But when you can give a name to the saboteur in your mind, it is very, very powerful. So today I'm going to talk about those 10 saboteurs so that you can learn what they are. Why do you want to learn what they are? Because the minute you can recognize these thoughts in your mind, they become less powerful. And we'll talk about that at the end because there are things you can do to recognize these saboteurs. And then in the next podcast episode, I'm going to give 5 tangible things you can do to take away the power of these saboteurs, to make them less powerful in your life, because they really are wreaking havoc. And anytime that you feel frustration towards another person, towards yourself, or a situation in life, you really can trace it to one of these 10 saboteurs. Isn't that crazy? That's a bold statement. That's like almost like, yeah, right, let's try this out. And go ahead, take anything in your life that you're feeling negatively about and try it out. Think of one thing or think of anything, but just for kicks, for scientific purposes, Choose one thing in your life right now that is really giving you a run for your money. It's really angering you or making you feel frustrated. And listen to these 10 different saboteurs as I go through them and figure out which one it falls under, because I promise you, you will find one that it falls under. And here's another tricky thing about saboteurs. It's so much easier to see them in other people. Like with anything in life, it's way easier for us to see the faults in others than it is to see them in ourselves. Now, there's a fault even in that statement. Saboteurs, it's not a fault. So it's not that we are broken or that we have a fault. Like I mentioned, these actually were survival tactics. This was our mind's way of trying to survive. It's actually, we need to have some empathy for these thought processes just to understand them. So we don't need to beat ourselves up because we have this saboteur thing happening, but we can recognize that it's happening. And that in and of itself can just be a game changer. I mean, like I said, meeting with Lindsey and all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, that's a saboteur. That's what's happening. Wow. And then once you recognize it, like I said, in next week's episode, we have some strategies of how to handle and cope with it. It has literally changed my life. I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying it is changing my life. And that's a bold claim, but that's why I am sharing this with you, because it is that powerful. So I'm going to leave in the show notes a link to Shirzad, or I'm saying that's wrong. I'm saying that wrong. It's Shirzad Chamine's TED Talk. And then there's also a link where you can go and take his test just to kind of see what kind of saboteurs you have and what your positive intelligence score is. So that's kind of fun to take a look at as well. But I'm going to tell you what the 10 different saboteurs are. I'm going to tell you their name. I'm going to give you a little brief description about them. And then I'll give you a sentence of what that saboteur might sound like. So again, I want you to think of something in your life, someone, something, or a situation with yourself that is causing you some angst, and see which one of these 10 saboteurs it goes with. And okay, once we describe and you learn those 10 saboteurs, we're going to look at how some of those might look in everyday life with some stories and some examples. And then we're going to look at how we can have compassion for these saboteurs, and we'll go from there. So, okay, the very first saboteur is the judge. The judge is the master saboteur. It's probably the most common, and it criticizes not only yourself, but others. You will never find the judge simply judging others. When that saboteur is judging other people, you're also judging yourself, but it judges circumstances as well. So this saboteur might sound like, you are not good enough. You will never measure up. Or it might say like, look at them. Oh my gosh, who do they think they are? Their work is crap. That is the judge. So that's number one. Number two is the controller. This saboteur feels like they need to have control of the situation to help reduce anxiety. So this would sound like, if you are not in control, everything is going to fall apart. That's number two. Number three is the stickler. This is the perfectionist. It's overly focused on order and rules. This saboteur might sound like, if it's not perfect, it's not worth doing. So that is definitely a saboteur. Number four is the pleaser. This saboteur seeks validation through people pleasing. So often it's at your own personal cost. And it might sound like, if you say no, they're not going to like you anymore. That's number four. Number five is the hyperachiever. This measures your self-worth simply by achievements. All of your validation comes from outside of you. So this would sound like, your worth depends on what you accomplish next. So you can imagine how that feels. That's number five. Number six is the victim. This is emotional and dramatic. It uses pain to gain attention or affection. And this would say something or sounds like, why does everything bad happen to me? That is the victim, number 6. Number 7 is the hyper rational. This is focusing excessively on logic. Their negative emotions are negative. So this would sound something like, feelings are irrelevant, stick to the facts. So that's number 7. That's the hyper rational. Number 8 is the hyper vigilant. So they're constantly anxious, always anticipating danger. This saboteur might sound like, in your mind, something is bound to go wrong. You need to be ready. So that's number 8. That's the hypervigilant. Number 9 is restless. This saboteur is always looking for the next activity or distraction. So this saboteur might sound like, in your mind, this is boring. All right, let's move on to something new. Number 10 is the avoider. They avoid conflict, avoids discomfort, avoids difficult tasks. This might sound like, in your mind, just put it off. It's not that important right now. So these are the 10 different saboteurs. And I want you to think about whatever that is in your mind, whether it's somebody in your life that's causing you some angst, whether it's you or whether it's an outside circumstance. Which one of those saboteurs does it fall into? So, how do these show up in our everyday life? It can look like negative self-talk, procrastination, strained relationships. I mean, really, it causes stress, reduced productivity, preventing long-term fulfillment. I mean, in business, I don't think we have to look very far. I think we can all, in one form or another, look at our business and find one, if not many, saboteurs that we're like, oh yeah, check, check, check. I mean, so many. I'm just laughing because I'm like, depending on the day, there's quite a few of those. And again, that's why I'm really so grateful to be working with Lindsey and learning about these and learning some skills to know how to like overcome them. And I really, I'm listening to the book Positive Intelligence by Shirzad Chamine. And I love the story that he shares about when he was in college. And I mean, he was very, very hyper achiever. He grew up with like, if I'm not doing well, then what's my value? No one's going to love me. And he also was a judge. He would very much judge other people. And so he was in a college class at a very prestigious college. And one of the students, they were having like this open conversation. And one of the students was like, you know, Shirzad, I feel really judged by you. Like, I feel like you think I'm kind of stupid or you treat me in a very degrading way. And he kind of was like, oh, well, thank you so much for your feedback. And in his mind, he's like, of course, you're the biggest idiot in the class. And another student was like, I feel the exact same way. And he's like, well, you're the second biggest idiot in the class. And then someone who he really respected stood up and he's like, I can't even sit here anymore. I feel like you are not even listening to their feedback and you're being degrading about this. I feel like you look up to me as some sort of person to put on a pedestal and it's so uncomfortable. I just can't even sit here anymore. And this was the first time that he was like, oh my gosh, they're all accurate. Like they are all very perceptive about my judgments of them. The ones who think I'm judging them negatively, even the person who thinks I'm judging them positively, they're not wrong. And it's making a really negative impact in my life. And this was his first eye-opening experience that led him into figuring out more about these saboteurs and diving and learning in more. So whether or not we are aware of them, the saboteurs are showing up in our lives. I'll share a few more stories of what these could look like. So here's the story of a stickler. Maya runs a small handmade jewelry business and she loves what she makes. She takes a lot of pride in her craftsmanship. However, she has that stickler saboteur that's always pushing her to triple check every little detail. Every time she launches a new product line, Maya spends weeks obsessing over like the perfect font on her website and re-editing her photos. She is convinced that anything less than flawless would ruin her brand. So meanwhile, her competitors have launched similar designs and like sold so many things. As she's just tweaking and like, oh no, but I need to fix that. I need to fix that. So Maya's perfectionism has kept her stuck. stopping her from progressing and missing opportunities. It wasn't until she embraced done is better than perfect that she started moving forward and growing in her business. So that might be something that's familiar with you as a stickler. Let's look at the pleaser. This might be something that you're more familiar with. Lila is a freelance graphic designer. She's built her business on being reliable and accommodating. Her pleaser saboteur whispers in her mind, you need to say yes to make them happy or they won't work with you again. They're going to tell people that you're not good to work with if you don't say yes. So when a client asks for endless revisions or last minute changes, Lila agrees, even if it means pulling an all-nighter. She prioritizes their needs over her boundaries, often delivering work for free or reduced rates to keep the peace. Over time, Lila is burnt out, resentful, but she fears saying no will ruin her reputation. It's only when she starts setting clear boundaries and recognizing her value that Lila regains her energy and builds healthier client relationships. So that is the pleaser. That may be something that you are familiar with. Now let's look into restless. Now, these are just a few examples. Like I said, there's 10. This is the last example I'll give, but there are many. So restless. Let's look at Sarah. She is a talented designer who always has a million ideas brewing, and I'm just laughing because I can relate. She jumps from project to project, starting with enthusiasm, but rarely finishing. Her restless saboteur whispers, there's something better to work on. This isn't exciting anymore. As a result, her desk is cluttered with half-finished designs, and her clients grow frustrated with missed deadlines. Sarah's constant need for novelty leaves her feeling scattered and unfulfilled, even though she craves satisfaction of completing a project. It's only when she recognizes the saboteur's voice and commits to staying present with her work that she begins to reclaim her focus and follow through. So, like I mentioned, you might recognize a few different saboteurs, maybe one dominant saboteur, but let's talk about how to have compassion. Because often we can get really frustrated and kind of beat ourselves up like, yeah, man, that sucks. Why do I do that? But let's just talk about why they show up. Like, where did this come from? The root of this. So let's go back to our childhood. And these negative thoughts really did come from a place of protection. So it is an unhealthy way of survival, but it was a way of survival. So I'm going to go through each one of the saboteurs and talk about how it helped young you, potentially young whoever, to survive. So the judge, it's criticizing ourselves or others. This helped us to meet expectations and avoid rejection. So little us felt the criticism of others. We knew we want to be loved and accepted and, have someone feed us and take care of us and bring us into their home and their love. And we feel, oh, they love us if we get that star on the chart. And so we meet that high expectation. We avoid that rejection. The controller, this one seems pretty obvious. If we are in charge, obviously we can manage the chaos. We can make sure that we're safe. So that, that's our mind telling us we've got this. We can make sure that we're in control. The stickler, this is the perfectionism. We are gaining approval. We're preventing the criticism. Again, it's that herd mentality. We don't want to stand out from the crowd. We want to be accepted and fit in. So if we're good enough, if we can jump high enough and just fit in, we'll prevent that criticism. The pleaser, putting others first earns love and acceptance. Oh, but if we just do enough and, please them enough, they'll love us. They'll take care of us. We'll avoid the danger and the anger. So just make them happy at all costs. The hyperachiever, of course, we see, oh, we achieved things. I did well on this test. Oh, I did good. And then I got approval. Okay, just keep doing that. That's what gets me validation. Okay, good. We keep doing that. The victim, gosh, we express pain and it draws attention. Oh, you poor thing. Oh, you get that validation a little bit and you just keep doing that and doing that. The hyper rational, you focus on logic. It shields us from the overwhelming emotions. The emotions can really hurt. You can see other people who seem overly emotional and, oh no, I don't want that. So we block it out and just let's just rely on the facts here. Hyper vigilant, constantly alert, keep us prepared, stay away from potential threats. That's obviously self-preservation there. The restless, gosh, boredom, it's discomfort. We don't want to be bored. Let's just seek distractions. Let's stay entertained we don't like that boredom. So let's just keep being entertained. The avoider, we're dodging conflict, the unpleasant feelings, fear, anxiety, just avoid it, avoid. So all of these things, obviously it has saved us in some way or another. It has avoided discomfort or pain, or it has brought us positive things in one way or another. So while in the past it has temporarily brought us or avoided certain things, in the long run, it is maladaptive. It is really hindering our growth and our relationships. So how can we navigate these? The first thing really is to call them out. And that's what I do with Lindsey, and she has me do. She's like, all right, let's name it. Which saboteur is this? And honestly, just naming the saboteur is huge. It all of a sudden becomes very impersonal and it becomes like this separate thing that's not a part of me. It's like, oh, there's this thing going on in here and it's a saboteur. It's not me. It's this thing in my mind. And it's all of a sudden there's just a separation there. And that's number 2. We separate. We learn to see the saboteurs as distinct from ourselves. It's not me. These are just our thoughts. It's not real. It's like the fallacy that because the majority of the people think that, it makes it true. That's not true. It's just, you learn to separate it. You learn to see it for what it is. It's just a thought. And then you intercept it. You use some mindfulness techniques to pause and disrupt their patterns. And that's what we're going to dive into in the next podcast episode. And then I love the wording of this next one. You shift to the sage. Doesn't that sound so wise? You accept your inner sage, your wise, calm, and empathetic self. And it's beautiful, but it's also some hard work. We are wise, we are calm, and we are empathetic. There is empathy within us. There are tactics that we can use to disrupt these thought patterns. And like I said, it starts with recognizing. So I really do recommend writing down these 10 different saboteurs and really starting to just call them out when you have a thought about someone else or yourself or a circumstance in life. Start to recognize which saboteur is going on here. Which one is it? Give it a name and then start to separate yourself from it. Say, okay, that is a saboteur and it is different from me. It's not me. And then, like I said, next week, we're going to dive into some techniques to pause and disrupt these thinking patterns, which is so powerful. And then dive into your wise, your calm, and your empathetic self. So I'm really, really grateful for learning about this. I mean, it is some powerful stuff and it really makes life so much more enjoyable. I really am so grateful to be able to show up and see others and myself with so much more empathy. I mean, empathy really, for me, there's, different tools and tactics for the inner sage, different ways the inner sage shows up. And for me, empathy has been a big one, but there are other ways, other inner sages. But it's just, and it is this ability to have joy in life and to find these saboteurs and to recognize them and we all have a ceiling of how much joy we feel in our lives. And once we hit that ceiling, we will self-sabotage. So let's say our ceiling is 10 feet. If we start to feel joy in life and it's hit that 10 feet limit, our thoughts will start to sabotage ourselves so that we don't exceed that limit. Well, with some practice, with some tools, we can move it higher so that we experience more joy and more success, more relationships, more abundance in life. And I'm learning that and experiencing that. And it's really a beautiful, wonderful thing. And it's not dependent on anybody else. It's not like, oh, great. Well, maybe, my spouse or my partner could also. No, it doesn't have to be like, this is just, you can do this independent of anyone else. And so it's a really exciting thing. So again, this is exciting for your business, like to be able to have the growth that you want in your business. But this is one of those episodes that really is every area of your life. So if this is something that is exciting to you or is as exciting to you as it is to me, share this with your loved ones, with your friends. Let them know about these 10 saboteurs. Let them know about Shirzad Chamine. You could share his links that I have in the show notes. This is just some exciting things that can really bring a lot of joy into people's lives. So join me in next week's episode where we'll dive into how to intercept the saboteurs and how to shift into your sage. So I'm excited to share those with you. And again, if you've not left a review for the podcast, go ahead and do that. It means the world to me. And more importantly, it can help someone else find this podcast. Thank you for being here on the Craft to Career podcast. I'll see you next time.